God in the flesh, and that God receives his flesh from one of us. Which means that Jesus Christ hallows and makes holy every stage of development of human life. If humans start out as a zygote, the God-man was a zygote. The God-man was a fetus. The God-man was a newborn. The God-man makes himself weak so that he can destroy that which makes us weak. And so we believe that Jesus Christ is God in the flesh. And if Jesus Christ is God in the flesh, then he has made holy.
Linking the ancient Christian faith with modern technology. You're listening to Internet-based Ancient Faith Radio.
It's time now for Stewardship Calling with your host, Bill Marianes. Bill is a stewardship evangelist whose Stewardship Calling ministry is focused on helping people, parishes, and Christian organizations discover and live their stewardship callings and embrace true stewardship and generosity so that they may have a good account before the awesome judgment seat of Christ. Here's Bill.
Love, happiness, peace, and purpose. Love, happiness, peace, and purpose. Is anybody listening out there looking for love, happiness, peace, and purpose? Let me ask it differently. Is anybody out there not looking for love, happiness, peace, and purpose? I bet not. Some of you might put those four values in a different order depending on where you are in your life's journey. And some of you might replace the word happiness with joy. And some of you on a faith journey might add to the list of attributes of kindness and gentleness and self-control and faith. But I'll bet all of you would not turn down more love, happiness, peace, and purpose in your life. Sadie Robertson, who's an actress and author of a New York Times bestselling book about faith and Christian values called Live Original, was an inspiring speaker at the 2020 Passion Christian Conference for Young Adults. And prior to that speech, she conducted a survey of her over 4.6 million followers on Instagram. Well, let that soak in for a second. This 24-year-old accomplished young woman already has 4.6 million people following what she says and does. Her survey of millennials asked two critical questions. What are you seeking in life, and where are you searching for it? Let me ask you to think about those two questions for yourself. What are you seeking in life, and where are you searching for it? I'd always add one more question that I always like to ask, and that is, why are you here? But the top four responses to Sadie's poll of 4.6 million, mostly young adults, determined that by far, and that's by a very large and wide margin, what these young people were all seeking was love, happiness, peace, and purpose. Let me say that again so that you don't miss it. What they wanted most was more love, more happiness, more peace, and more purpose. Not more money or more material stuff. Now, what's funny about that is when I asked a group of older baby boomers my age the same questions, the same four values came up most often. So how can it be that what our youth are seeking is the same thing that you and I and everyone else seems to be seeking? And if the list of love and happiness and peace and purpose sounds familiar, you might have heard a similar list from a very, very, very old former murderer turned Reformed saint. He wrote those thoughts out in a letter almost 2,000 years ago. Talk about timeless truth. He said very clearly, and I quote, "For you have been called to liberty through love. Serve one another. For all the love is fulfilled in one word. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. But the fruit of the Holy Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control." And these were the summarized conclusions of St. Paul's letter to the Galatians in chapter 5, verses 13 through 26. St. Paul clearly described the core values for those of our Lord and Savior in Jesus Christ and those who followed him. He focused the Galatians, and honestly us too, all of our attention should be focused on seeing flowing in our lives when we let the Holy Spirit lead us to what St. Paul called the fruit of the Spirit, end quote. Now, take a moment and focus on that precise word, fruit. The Greek term that was used was singular. He wasn't offering a list of 9 separate fruits. What he's telling us to adopt are 9 characteristics of the single fruit of the Holy Spirit. In other words, in Christ, we should expect to see all of these characteristics showing up together as we give control to the Holy Spirit. In short, what our youth want, what our adults want, indeed, what I think all humans want, is bound up in love, joy, peace, and faithful purpose, all in service to our Lord and those who he's placed in our path. And tonight we're going to explore a new Orthodox service organization focused on helping all of our youth and young adults discover that greater joy, love, peace, and faithful purpose in service to others. Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome to Stewardship Calling in the first Wednesday series on Ancient Faith Radio. This is Bill Marianes from stewardshipcalling.com and Orthodox Ministry Services, coming to you live from the shores of beautiful Lake Lanier in Gainesville, Georgia, just north of Atlanta. I have a simple premise that you have been called by your Creator to a personal calling, a reason to your life and a reason for your life, something you need to do with all of the gifts over which God has made you a steward. It's what I call your stewardship calling. And St. Paul has made this crystal clear throughout all of his writings, but in particular, I focus your attentions to Ephesians 4:1, where he clearly states, quote, "I beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you have been called," end quote. Now, until 2017 by day, I was blessed to be a partner in 2 great international law firms of over 1,100 lawyers each, where I served in management and served as managing partner of our Atlanta office and practiced in the areas of mergers and acquisitions and corporate law. But my personal calling is to be a stewardship calling evangelist. I'm here to help people in parishes discover and live their stewardship callings so that they may have a good account before the awesome judgment seat of Christ, as we all follow Christ's great commandment to love one another and his great charge to serve one another and his great commission to make disciples of all nations. So welcome to the journey. Now, this program, a lot of other helpful tools and information about effective churches and strategic planning and stewardship and servant leadership and other topics, you can find at my always free website, stewardshipcalling.com, and you can always reach me at bill@stewardshipcalling.com. And to all of our listeners tonight, we want you to join us by calling in and interacting with our special guest by calling 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. So the question we're going to explore tonight is if you are willing to help provide an unprecedented opportunity for our youth and young adults to better learn and apply love, joy, peace, and faithful purpose by serving for a year in order to prepare them for a lifetime. The corollary question is, can we afford not to? You know, there's an old Chinese saying that goes, if you want happiness for an hour, take a nap. If you want happiness for a day, go fishing. If you want happiness for a year, inherit a fortune. If you want happiness for a lifetime, help somebody. And it was legendary Notre Dame football coach Lou Holtz who modified those comments in one of the most inspirational commencement speeches he once offered. The way he put it was, and I quote, "If you want to be happy for an hour, eat a steak. If you want to be happy for a day, play golf. If you want to be happy for a week, go on a cruise. If you want to be happy for a month, buy a car. But if you want to be happy for a year, win the lottery. And ultimately, if you want to be happy for a lifetime, put your faith in Jesus Christ. He will never let you down," end quote. And as it turns out, what our old Chinese ancestors knew back then and what Coach Holtz told us more recently are totally true and validated by the theology, as we discussed earlier, from St. Paul. And Sadie Robertson's research showed that young adults are with great energy and are out there seeking greater love, joy, peace, and purpose. But before I introduce my guest tonight, let's take a quick look at what St. Paul meant in that list of values to be sought and how the Orthodox Volunteer Corps can serve all of those needs. St. Paul began with the Greek word agape, not just the love in the simplest sense, but selfless love, the kind of love that considers other people more than ourselves without expecting anything in return. And St. Paul draws from that message that he actually delivered in 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 through 13, that God's Spirit in us produces God's unconditional love in us for him, and here it comes, for others. Now, pay attention. You're going to see a theme developing here and focusing on service to others. The joy that St. Paul talks about comes from the Greek word chara, which doesn't necessarily imply simple happiness. It's all about joy in a biblical sense. This joy that we're called to seek is a sort of inner peace. It's a transcendent peace that's possible if we place our faith and our purpose and everything we do in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And it arises through trusting God rather than our own abilities or circumstances, just like St. Paul wrote to the Philippians in chapter 4, verses 4 through 9. So again, the joy and peace that comes from being a part of something so much bigger than ourselves. Now, the patience about which St. Paul speaks is the trust we must acquire in the Holy Spirit to wait for God's perfect timing and not our calendar, right? The translated word was makrothemia, and this patience includes controlling our own response to circumstances. It was translated in the old days as long-tempered. And if we can truly accept that God is in control of our lives and we submit to his control and serve those who he has in mind for us to serve, we learn makrothemia. Now, kindness is always simple, but it ain't easy. The original term was Christos, and it incorporates the concepts of being good and gentle and kind to anyone and everyone. Our service to others is a positive manifestation of this Christotis, goodness and gentleness. But our goodness also incorporates moral decency and being respectable and honorable and righteous in our service to our fellow man. Finally, St. Paul's message of faithfulness is a crucial word from the Greek term pistis, which frequently is translated in the New Testament simply as faith. This is the practice of continued service and endurance driven by trust in the Lord and his plan, even when we don't understand all that God is doing in our lives. But even beyond the critical core values taught by St. Paul, our old Chinese ancestors, and Coach Holtz, as it turns out, your Creator intentionally hardwired your human circuitry to encourage you to serve and help others as you seek love, joy, peace, and purpose. Now, he did it in a variety of ways, but perhaps no more clearly than through the hormones and chemicals your body produces in your various glands. I want you to remember the acronym DOSE, D-O-S-E, because God gives you a big dose of what you need. And the acronym DOSE means the D stands for dopamine, the O stands for oxytocin, the S stands for serotonin, and the E is for endorphins. You see, God caused our bodies to produce dopamine, which is the pleasure and motivator hormone. God caused our bodies to produce oxytocin, which is the bonding, the love, and the trust-building hormone. God caused our bodies to produce serotonin, which is the mood-stabilizing, the happiness, the well-being hormone. And God caused our bodies to produce endorphins that offer pain relief, but more positively, they allow for relaxation and fulfillment. So if these hormones boost our mood and help promote well-being and alleviate anxiety and help prevent depression, and at the same time trigger pleasure, joy, bonding, and trust, how do we get more of these gifts from your Creator? What can we do to help our bodies produce all of these helpful and safe chemicals? The simple but critically amazing answer is that it is largely up to you. It's all about the choices you make every second, every minute, every day, every week, every year. You see, as it turns out, when you serve others and when you help someone else who needs assistance, these hormones start internally busting out of your brain's guts and glands and bring you true joy and peace and purpose. I mean, yeah, your environment, what you eat and how active you are and your genetics also play big roles. But because of this, when you hear from my guest tonight about the amazing new opportunity they are providing to our youth and young adults, you will see how they are actually creating the very environment where all of these biological characteristics can combine with the theological underpinnings to provide a truly transformational opportunity for young people. All right, so up to now, I hope I've been able to convince you that theology and biology have conspired to suggest that perhaps the Orthodox Volunteer Corps is the answer to many of the most critical needs of our youth and our communities. But how about the discipline I studied in college about 1 million years ago, psychology? Does that play any role? And does it point young people to the Orthodox Volunteer Corps as a potential source of happiness, joy, and purpose? Well, look, psychologists have been studying happiness for about as long as they've been studying anything. And as it turns out, The psychological studies all point to the greatest source of happiness and joy being the quality of your close relationships. Now, this obviously includes the family dynamics and your friendships and any romantic relationships. I mean, there is a fundamental and direct correlation between your overall happiness and joy and the happiness you enjoy in the engaged relationship with others. Now, of course, if you're able to engage in fulfilling work, that can bring happiness and joy. But perhaps the easiest and most controllable contributor to happiness and joy is helping others, service to others, and random acts of kindness directed to others. You want greater happiness? Serve others more, be kind more, and love more. The research is clear. More money is not the answer once your basic needs and necessities are met. It goes right back to that Chinese proverb in The Wisdom of Coach Holtz. Yeah, sure, in a secular sense, every day can be Christmas by merely ordering something on Amazon to be delivered every day. But while I don't know all of you, I bet I know something about all of you. The happiness you feel when that Amazon delivery comes is most likely at its peak right before you open the box. And your happiness goes down steadily from there. I mean, the product you bought may fulfill a utilitarian need, or it may provide you some appreciation in the future, but the joy buzz is transitory from just stuff. But do something good for someone else or serve another person in a way that makes their life better, and you will have not only a big dose of dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins when you serve, but the permanent memory of that act of kindness and service will imprint in your brain such that as you reflect on it and remember it, it will give you another repeated shots of those hormones every time you relive your service to others. Not out of vanity or lack of humility, but born from the knowledge that you used your gifts that your Creator gave you for greater purpose than yourself. And more importantly, you'll have the comforting knowledge that your love of others as you practice Christ's great commandment, John 13:34, to love, is helping to prepare a good account before the awesome judgment seat of Christ, as we pray in every divine liturgy from 2 Corinthians 5:10. Now, St. Paisios the Athonite made extremely clear this critical point, and I quote, "After our death, when we come face to face with Christ, we will understand the why and how of our lives, and will be told everything we went through in this world. Then with all the power of our existence, we will say to him, 'Thank you, my God, for allowing these for me,'" end quote. So in what state of mind do we currently find our youth and young adults? Well, you'd have to have your head in the sand not to hear the nonstop gloom and doom about significantly increasing levels of anxiety and depression and loneliness and helplessness and feeling unloved and without a sense of purpose in life. Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital found a 35% increase in children with mental health issues and a rise in suicide attempts just from April through November of 2020 when compared to the same time period in 2019. Proskome. Listen, please don't miss this. A 35% increase in suicide attempts and mental health issues in our youth and young adults just in that one period of time in 2020. And not surprising, the Journal of American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry in November of 2020 article, they analyzed 80 studies and found, and I quote, "Children and adolescents are probably more likely to experience high rates of depression and most likely anxiety during and after enforced isolation ends. This may increase as enforced isolation continues," end quote. Now, there's a lot of studies that have linked isolation and loneliness to an increased risk for depression and anxiety and substance abuse, eating disorders, all kinds of mental problems. But isolation from their peers is especially difficult for adolescents and actually can increase suicide ideation in that population. Many of the studies point to the contribution that social media has made towards increased depression and even cyberbullying. I mean, one of the biggest social media antagonists is the dreaded like button. Yeah, you heard me right, the like button. When a post that you make doesn't receive the addictive likes that you wanted, then you feel bad or unfulfilled or a sense of doubt. In one of the most exhaustive studies of health and human well-being, of the biggest blocks of Americans, our beloved millennials, the Blue Cross Blue Shield Health Index reviewed data from over 55 million millennials that were commercially insured. And their data showed, now this is pre-COVID, that from 2014 to 2017, major depression among millennials increased by 31%. Hyperactivity increased by 29%. And shockingly, even type 2 diabetes increased by 22%. And in a 2020 Deloitte survey of millennials that covered 43 different countries, their data found that 44% of millennials are stressed out all or most of the time. Now, people of faith know that this too shall pass. At some point, the COVID-19 story will just be the story that we tell. However, what can we do now for our treasured millennials and the next generators, our youth, our young adults that are growing up in these turbulent times? I actually did a whole Stewardship Calling live program on the evils of what I call anti-social media on March 3rd, 2021. You can either download it by going to my website, stewardshipcalling.com, and go to the Internet Radio tab and just scroll down to March 3rd, 2021. Or you can go to Ancient Faith Radio, the Stewardship Calling pages, and again, go down to March 3rd, 2021. And we could go on painting out the challenges we've all observed and heard tonight. But tonight, we're actually going to focus on a cure. You see, the very wise King Solomon, who lived sometime around 970 to 931 BC, recorded in the Holy Scripture book of Proverbs, chapter 22, verse 6, and I quote, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it," end quote. And many of the scientific studies have shown that volunteering and serving others is good for your mental health and physical health. It counteracts the effects of stress and anger and anxiety. It also actually brings fun and, here it comes, fulfillment to your life. It obviously increases your social and relational skills as you serve others. It connects you to others in more meaningful ways than glib and irrelevant kind of social media-like concepts. And ultimately, it helps you advance your own discovery of your own why. See, Sadie Robertson focused the Passion Conference Christian youth attendees, and St. Paul focused the Galatians and all of us on increasing and living greater love, joy, peace, and purpose. And as it turns out, your loving Creator put much more in your control over your love, joy, peace, and purpose than you ever imagined. Tonight, you're going to learn about an exemplary opportunity for any young people you know to do just that through the Orthodox Volunteer Corps. So we're going to take a short break right now. And when we return, it's going to be my great privilege to introduce you to my special guests, Michael Sider-Rose and Kyra Limberakis. And we're going to explore the details behind the formation and vision of the Orthodox Volunteer Corps and what it can do and how you can play a meaningful role in helping to achieve the needs and serving others. So please remember, we'd love to hear your questions or comments. You can call in at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. So let's take a short break and we'll be right back.
Bill will be right back, but the lines are open if you want to ask a question or offer your thoughts. The number is 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO.
Hi, my name is Tom, and I am from Lafayette, Indiana, and I actually grew up in the Assemblies of God denomination, and now I attend an Episcopal church here in Lafayette. But I just wanted to say that I discovered Ancient Faith Radio maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and it's just amazing how much talent, production-wise, but all the on-air talent, it's really top-notch, and I enjoy the music and the podcast and the talk call-in shows. Dr. Constantinou is the top 1% academically, how she handles everything on air. Really, I could be probably Orthodox. A lot of the beliefs line up to my personal theology. So I just wanted to say it's been just such a blessing. And I just loved being able to have the opportunity to give this week to provide and help the ministry that's going on up there in northern Indiana. And y'all are just outstanding. I want you to know that I'm praying for you all. And thank you very much for all that you do.
Stewardship Calling is back, and we are ready for your call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Bill Marianes.
So welcome back to Stewardship Calling on our first Wednesday program, the first one of 2022, where my special guests are Michael Sider-Rose and Kyra Limberakis, and we're exploring the why and vision of the Orthodox Volunteer Corps. So let me introduce you to our guest. So Michael Sider-Rose grew up in Philadelphia, where, as he says, he had visions of becoming the next Mike Schmidt, even though his little league slugging percentage never reached triple digits. Maybe we can help him with that too. But after college, he attended the University of Pittsburgh for a PhD in history. And 8 years later, he emerged from the library with a completed dissertation on, of all things, religion and politics in the post-World War II America. But he was always kind of keen on focusing his academic and his community. And so he took a position with Chicago Semester, which is a faith-based off-campus experiential learning program. And he worked there from 2000 to 2006 and frankly enjoyed it so much that he decided to create a similar venture in Pittsburgh as part of the Pittsburgh Project. And he was the director of the Pittsburgh Semester from 2007 through 2008. And then in January of 2009, Michael joined Choral Center for Civic Leadership in Pittsburgh, where he served for nearly 13 years. For the past 10 years, Michael has volunteered extensively with the Neighborhood Resilience Project, where he also serves on the board. And finally, by the grace of God, he was able to be stolen away from this incredible life of service and commitment so that he could help shepherd and lead the Orthodox Volunteer Corps that we're going to talk about tonight. Now, in his spare time, he likes moving, as he says, running and biking, or not moving, reading, and then sampling food from around the globe, which he calls the perfect balance of moving and not moving. I just call it a solicitous attempt for him to get people to bring him food. But it's a brilliant idea, so I'm glad it works. But he has the great privilege of being married to Randy Maria and father to Anna and Molly and Eliza and Tobias. So, Michael, welcome to Stewardship Calling on Ancient Faith Radio.
Thank you so much, Bill. I appreciate it.
All right, we're going to talk about your slugging percentage a little bit later, but if you'll just sit tight for a second, I want to introduce your partner in this amazing ministry. Now, Carolyn Barakas is a name that's been known to a lot of people in the Orthodox ecosystem for a lot of reasons, but not the least of which is that she's been the director of the Crossroad Summer Institute and the assistant director of the Office of Vocation and Ministry at Hellenic College Holy Cross Greek Orthodox School of Theology. She received a bachelor's degree from Villanova University and a Master of Theological Studies from the Boston College School of Theology and Ministry, and she focused her studies on youth and young adult ministry and the ministry of women in the church. Her experience in youth work spans well over decades and includes serving as staff for her Metropolis camp at Ionian Village, at the OCF and Crossroad, and all these programs that were part of our and her faith formation traditions. And in addition to working full-time in the ministry, Kyra has published articles on the topic of young women's faith formation, something we need a lot more emphasis put on. She's the granddaughter of an Orthodox priest and is committed to the education and ministry of young people for the future of the church. And it is such a pleasure to have Kyra on this program and to introduce her as part of the team at the Orthodox Volunteer Corps. So Kyra, welcome to you too to Stewardship Calling on Ancient Faith Radio.
Thank you so much, Bill. Happy to be here.
Well, Happy New Year to you both. So here's the deal. I gave those simple, inaccurate, they were accurate, but incomplete is what I meant to say, bios, right? I mean, because you were very sparse in your humility allowed you to be very sparse in it. So we need to go a lot deeper than that. Now, there's always a lot more to the person than their official CD. So I want you all to share with everybody a little bit more about your particular upbringing and your background, so we get to know you a little bit better before we dig into the important topic. So who's going first?
I'll jump in, Bill.
Okay.
Especially since you were ragging on me for my sludging percentage, but I did.
What
really
is it, by
like,
the way?
It was low. We're not going to get into details on that,
Okay.
but I will say this: that I had a really great time as a kid growing up. I grew up in Philadelphia, and if folks know it, in the Germantown neighborhood.
Oh yeah,
it was a lower middle class interracial neighborhood, and for me as a kid, I loved a lot of the things that little boys love. We'd run up and down the block, we'd play baseball, climb trees, play, a variety of different games. And I had a tremendously loving family. And so a lot of things that I think, would be resonate with a lot of folks is a part of what my growing up was like. But there was also this other feature of my growing up that I came to understand more and more over time. And it was that my parents were very engaged with the life of the city, and they were engaged in such a way that their faith infused that engagement, and their faith was a driver of that engagement. And I was thinking recently about a story of my mom and how my mom exemplified that engagement, that faithful engagement with this particular story. So my mom grew up in rural Canada, and she actually grew up in an Amish context. But she eventually met my dad, and they emigrated to the United States, and they eventually got into urban America, and they moved to Philadelphia, right? And when my mom was in Philly, my brother and I were going to public school. And in many ways, the public school system was great for us, but it also fell short in a lot of different ways. And my mom got involved in this organization called Parents Union for Public Schools. It was an effort to try to improve the public school system, right? And she wanted to do that for us, but she also wanted to do it because there were a lot of kids, especially a lot of kids who were low-income kids who were not getting a fair shake, right, for their education. So she started doing her part to try to make a difference in the school system. And there was this one year where there was a teacher strike, right? And it was a very complicated situation, right? I'm not here to explore sort of whether it was legit for the teachers to go on strike or not. But what my mom was involved in with this parents' union was to specifically call actually both sides of that dispute, call people to the table and say, you've got to resolve whatever differences you have for the sake of the children, because they have now been out of school for too long, right? So this was a very small organization of just volunteer parents. But what they did was they said, we've got to do something dramatic. And so they held a protest downtown, right? And what they did was they actually blocked off the streets right outside of City Hall, which is a very, very busy area. And it was actually ended up being one of the biggest traffic jams in the history of the city up to that point in time. And we've got this picture of my mom. All right. Remember, this is a woman who grew up in an Amish community in rural Canada. She's 5 feet tall, got fiery red hair. We got this picture of my mom who is ringing this huge school bell, calling both sides to get back to the bargaining table so the children can go back to school, right? And I was there, and I saw her do that. Oh, you were there? I was there with her. She took us on this, on this protest. Good for her. Right? It was good for her. And the thing that I carry with me now are a few pieces, from this moment, right? The one was that I know that my mom saw a need and she decided to do something about it. That's one thing that stuck with me, right? The second thing was that she was bold, right? She knew the moment required something significant, and she was bold, right? She was also persistent, right? The picture of her ringing the bell was this dramatic moment. And yet she worked at this organization for years to make incremental change, right? She was persistent, right? And finally, her work was so deeply rooted in her faith, right? She was helping children, especially low-income kids, right? Children who were often overlooked, right? Right. And this focus on people who we, with our set of eyes, don't think are important, is so much in the tradition of what Jesus Christ did. Yes. So much of his work, so much of his healing, so much of the time that he spent was with people that we think are less than, we think are unimportant, right? So with the lepers, right? With the tax collectors, right? With women, right? And even in fact, Jesus said, let the children come into me, right? I'm not a biblical scholar, but I've read enough to know that children in Jesus' time were not valued as we value them now. They were seen sort of as second-class citizens, right? Yeah. And so even that is a radical move to say that. So my parents and here my mom in particular bequeathed this tradition to me, which has become very important and a part of who I am. So tonight for what she gave me.
Well, listen, that is really an incredible testament and testimonial, and God bless her and God bless the work that she did. I mean, I love that you were actually able to take this historic moment and kind of distill it down to finding the need, being bold, being persistent, and doing everything with a faith-based orientation. But I'm just, I don't know your mom, obviously, and I've never seen that picture, but I got to see that picture now. But I hope that you will continue to pick up the bell and ring it loudly and persistently and with boldness, and even if you have to block traffic. Okay, so it's all cool, man. I think that is a powerful problem, and I can see how that helped form who you are as a human. And I think that is a great testament, a great story. God bless, man. That is awesome. That is awesome. And so now, because of that, I don't have to ask you about your slugging percentage, because I get it. You know, it's
that's good news.
Yeah, no. That's really powerful. I've got this visual, because I do know you and I have seen you. So now I will always picture you ringing a big loud bell. Okay. Whew, that's a good one. All right, Kyra, it's your turn now. What are you going to do? What are you going to do to top that? I mean,
I don't know that I can. And I have to say, it's been such a joy working with Michael these past 2 years and with our whole team. But I feel like every time we have a meeting, I'm learning something new about Michael, and that was a new one for me, and I'm so grateful. I'm here listening as well. So thank you, Michael. Well, yeah, you shared a little bit of my more, I guess, professional background and education, but I also grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I mentioned in my bio, or you mentioned that my grandfather was a priest. And so we, grew up in a very devout and faithful Orthodox home, church every Sunday, metropolis camps every summer. That was just kind of our way of life. I grew up going to public school, which I loved and really appreciated, kind of the diversity of experiences and perspectives that gave me. But I always remember feeling, a sense of home when I was in my church community, and especially in the summertime at camps, where that is where I was really given an opportunity to make my faith my own. If I were to reflect on a story that, I think gives a little bit of an indication of why I am where I am today, I'll share a little bit more about this in the second question that we'll probably get asked. But so I mentioned my grandfather was a priest, a Greek Orthodox priest in the Philadelphia area. And when I was a little girl, just about 5 or 6 years old, we were at church on Sunday in the middle of liturgy. And I decided that I wanted to help him with his work. And
well you should.
Yes, that's right. And so,
I'm seeing this unfold now. Go ahead and tell the story.
I
got to hear this. I can see it happening.
And so I somehow managed to escape from my parents and ran right up to the altar, through the altar screen, to stand right next to my papu as he was preparing communion. And, there were my parents, their faces were bright red, and, they said they could hear gasps.
Nobody's breathing
pews.
in church.
Right. Everyone's like, she's going to go up in flames or something. And, my papu he just looked down at me, laughed, kind of pat my head, and then scooted me on my way. But after the fact, after liturgy, I recall him actually, taking a break from coffee hour to talk to his parishioners, and said, it seems like you're interested in what's going on. And he took me actually to the section behind the altar where they would bless the icons, right? For 40 days. And he, taught me about, the process of blessing icons. And, it wasn't a radical move on his part by any means, but when I think back to that story, and that moment in my life, I think there are two things that really emerged for me that have influenced who I am today. And one is that, I've always had this kind of curiosity and desire to know more of who God is and more about our faith. And I think that was evident even from a very young age, just a curiosity, a thirst. But then the second thing too was that I was given an example of a church leader who didn't take that moment and see it as, oh, Kyra's trying to be, rebellious, or she did something so wrong or whatever. And we need to teach her the right ways of, how we approach the altar, but rather, took it as a learning moment to say, hey, let me teach you more about the faith. I see that you're interested. And it's not that he ever articulated that to me himself, but it's something that I look back at. And I think there could have been a number of different ways he could have responded to that scenario. But by kind of giving me the blessed opportunity of just, opening the door a little bit, I guess, to share more of what he does and his ministry was something that has then motivated, how I do ministry with young people, which is really taking their curiosity and maybe sometimes they're really hard questions or they're really frustrating questions and engaging them in a way that, I try my best to have it not be rooted, in fear or So anyway, so that's a little story about my upbringing.
That is awesome. I honestly didn't think you were going to be able to top old Michael over there, but I think you did it. I mean, I think that.
I don't know about that.
No. Listen, and God bless your grandfather. Your papa was just, I'm sure there were a lot of gasping and moaning and your eye rolling and stuff going on over there. But not only was he teaching you a lesson, he was also teaching that was a teachable moment that he seized for everybody in the congregation. To basically, and you got the message. I mean, you got the message that says, we don't stifle curiosity. We don't stifle questions. We welcome them. And I always call it, Kyra, I always call it a judo move, right? So like when people are boxing, right, there's force against force going in the same direction and it dissipates. But judo takes the person coming at you and instead of just pushing back, you just slightly lean them in the direction you want to move them and you keep them going forward. And I think your papu did a judo move on you right there. And he also did it for his parishioners. And I think that's powerful.
Right.
Oh God,
right.
That is so great. And I'll be honest with you, it was the tie-in to the commercial break. If you're listening to commercial break, but the person that wrote in was talking about Jeannie Constantino, and when I did a program at her husband's parish and stuff like that, or when I was in California, she was the one that first taught me about consecrated women going in the altar, and that's no big deal. And the first time I went to a monastery that was comprised of nuns, and I was seeing the nuns serve and stuff like that. I go, oh well, this is I mean this is not. You're not going to burn up in flames, but I do think that I do think that is a powerful, powerful moment and a meaningful moment in the trajectory of your life, just as it was in Michael's case. So thank you both for sharing that, because sometimes people are reluctant to share these great things, but I think that tells us more about you than any bio or CV ever could. So look, I as you know, I'm always been preaching this concept of a stewardship calling, that every one of us have been given gifts and talents and abilities and networks and experiences and genetics and all these things. And our job is to sort that all out and to use them in the direction that God had intended us to use them by how we steward over the gifts that he gave us so that we can discover what we're trying to do. Now, much of what you're going to be doing at Orthodox Volunteer Corps is actually helping young adults start to, or maybe take the next step in discovering and living their stewardship calling. So I'd like you to share with everyone a little bit about kind of the journey that you went on to discover and live the stewardship calling, both that which you most recently did and that which you're doing through OVC.
Absolutely. I could take a stab here first and maybe pick up the story from, my mom ringing the bell to I'll go with the analogy, Bill, as you did, to me picking up the bell and doing my own effort at ringing. And the first part of that story, I think, is going to school. So I mentioned, you mentioned in the bio, Bill, that that I did a PhD in history, and what I studied in that was religion and politics, but it was also urban history and it was race relations, and I was trying to understand something about the American story and some of the systemic injustices that are a part of that story, and how I, as someone who is also in that story, can play my little part in trying to build a little bit better of a world, a little more just world, one that is a little more peaceful and hopeful, right? And so I wanted to understand that story. And so that's kind of the first part of it. The second piece then was me taking my first job. And when I was looking for my first job, I was thinking about an academic position, and I did apply.
Yeah, because that's what people with PhDs do, right? I mean,
that's one thing you can do. That's one thing you can do. But
I'm glad you didn't, by the way.
Thank God, right?
Yeah.
And I had so I actually I got married the year before I finished my PhD, and then I decided I didn't just want to go anywhere. I wanted to go where this woman was going, that I was now married to, and she was interested in Chicago and wanted to go to the University of Chicago for graduate work. And so I found a job there that was a really lovely position where I had one foot in the academy and one foot on the street. Right? It was this job that brought college students to the city, folks who were seniors in college, to study, right, and also to have internships in their field of their field of study, and then finally to just be immersed in the life of the city. And what I discovered in Chicago is that I loved the opportunity to walk with students in a context where really important moral questions would begin to bubble up very naturally, right? Because in Chicago, like every big city, the proximity of wealth and poverty is right next to each other, right? And it is very difficult for people to not kind of see some of the glaring differences, and then to say, well, what is going on here, right? Why are there these differences, and what can we do about that? How can we be a part of creating a world that is in which there is more a deeper community, right, where we are really connected to one another, right, and serving our neighbor in powerful ways, right? So I love that opportunity. That program was not an Orthodox program, and at the time, but I continued that work, and I eventually moved to Philadelphia. My wife and I now had 2 kids. Chicago was pretty expensive for us. We had ties to Pittsburgh, and so we moved back to Pittsburgh. And I actually did a similar program called Pittsburgh Semester for a time. Connected it to a Christian community development organization. It was really lovely work. Then I started my work at Coro, at the Coro Center for Civic Leadership, which you mentioned in the bio, Bill.
Right,
and
right.
That work was, again, connected to young adults. And it was also now really focused on leadership development, right? Thinking about how can young adults engage in communities in a constructive way, in an effective way? How can young adults connect with communities such that they identify the assets of that community, right? And really work together with folks there. Honestly, I believe this was not a religious organization. It was a secular organization. But when we were at our best, right, which was not all the time, we really were trying to create something that was about communion, that was about a deeper form of communion, right?
Yeah.
And I realized as I got into the depth of these conversations with young adults, really talented folks, right? Folks who went to Yale University in the East to University of Southern California in the West. I mean, just top-notch folks, right? They would come through our program, we'd work with them, and I would discover that if I'm going to talk now about these questions of deep purpose that you were referring to at the beginning, of the show, Bill, that I needed to be talking about faith, right? There was no other way to speak about this, right? I also became Orthodox. This was about 12 years ago. And that's a longer story for another time. But when I became Orthodox, then I discovered soon that I wanted to bring this connection to Orthodoxy, the beauty of this tradition, right, with all of these things that I've been thinking about in terms of engagement in the world, right? And so I'll let Kyra tell if she wants to the story of how we met and started working on an Orthodox Volunteer Corps, but when I first started connecting with Focus North America and Focus Pittsburgh, and then with the Neighborhood Resilience Project, beautiful Orthodox organizations that are really trying to bring these things together, it was a lovely discovery for me, and a lovely journey of vocation and calling.
So it sounds like the academic, along with the experiential, both from your mom's perspective, but actually, I mean, there's probably no more example, which you talk about, that crucible community than where University of Chicago's campus is, right? I mean, right. Kind of juxtapose both all spectrums there. But this notion of education and service in community, and then walking with the young people and engaging them and embracing them, are kind of key points in your journey. Is that a I know it's of gross oversimplification, but is that accurate?
Absolutely.
And then the last piece was the faith piece, right?
Absolutely. Yes. And part of what is so attractive to me about Orthodox Volunteer Corps is it brings all those pieces together, right? And it does it in such a way that says, for adults, and I believe powerfully in the importance of that particular community, and that's where I've spent, just my life, my work, and
Right.
my experience, my time. If we're going to do that, the power of service is incredible to make that investment. It is incredible in terms of the learning that can take place. It is incredible in terms of just the inherent importance of it, and it is incredible in how it can shape our lives for years and years to come. So yeah, I'm just so excited.
Well, it sounds like, again, and you're just ratifying, I mean, that all of your big points of inflection in your life are moving you in the direction of this, which is kind of a nexus of all these different values and attributes. And I can't wait for us to explore that. All right. So, Ms. Kyra, the problem with you is that anybody in the Orthodox ecosystem that hears your name now will, of course, associate with little 5-year-old you busting into the altar. That's another story. But everybody in the Orthodox ecosystem cannot separate the extraordinary, amazing work that you've done with through Crossroad in really changing the trajectory of people's lives. There's somebody, I won't name names, who went on 4 different programs, kind of different types of programs in our Orthodox and our ethnic ecosystems. And I was talking to her, and she gave, ratings on a 1 to 10 Likert scale on every one of them. And there were some 5s, there was a 7, there was a 9. And when she went through Crossroads, she said it's a 12. I said, I'm sorry, the scale only goes to 10. She goes, no, it's a 12. I mean, so that is I don't know how you're going to top that, kid. I just got to be honest with you. I mean, that is such an extraordinary thing. But enough about that. Let's talk about your journey in the fulfillment of your calling.
Well, I'm a little speechless there for a second. Sorry, Bill.
Well, you should be, because that's your fault. It's your fault. No, I'm not trying to be kind. Anybody who knows me knows I don't go out of my way to be kind. I just tell the truth and let the chips fall where they may. And the problem is you've done some extraordinary work, and I think that's all directionally pointed by the way your life is taking you through the calling. And I just wanted to spend a few moments on that before we get into the great story of OVC.
Sure. Thank you. Well, and Crossroad is a huge part of my journey, and also my understanding of vocation and calling. So, I was saying earlier that, we grew up going to our Metropolis camps every summer. And I can recall my senior year of high school, my mom learned about Crossroad from someone from another parent. And she was like, Kyra, you have to apply for this. And I really did not want to apply.
Oh, really? Why not?
I heard it was like Orthodox boot camp. That's what I had heard about it. And then I also was the summer before my freshman year of college. I knew I was going to be going to Ionian Village. I was going to do my Metropolis camp. And I was like, wow, this seems like a lot to do it. And so I really didn't want to go. And my mom both my parents forced me to apply. And little did they know how that would have changed the whole trajectory of my life, because it was at Crossroad as a high school, as an 18-year-old, where I learned about an Orthodox approach to vocation, which is that we all have the same vocation. This is how we explain it. And the vocation is, to love God and love neighbor.
Right.
And the ways in which we respond to that call will manifest differently because we were created in unique ways and we have different gifts and talents. And it is an ongoing process of responding to this call that will evolve and change over time. But it's not this fixed thing. And it's not just your career. You can live out your vocation in your career, but it is a part. It is a way of being. It's your way of being in Christ. And so
Amen.
I learned that when I was 18 years old. Father Hopko was one of my professors, and he just totally blew my mind.
Yeah.
And I, as someone who did grow up, I would say, fairly, with a fairly decent kind of religious literacy level, I was still just amazed at the depth that Orthodoxy had to offer because of Father Hopko and other professors. And then I met Mary Long, who was the director of the program at the time. And she was the first woman I had ever met who had pursued, a master's degree in theology and then had a career out of it. And I just didn't even know that was possible. And so that experience of going to Crossroad as a high school student really sparked something in me. And then when I went on to college, I felt some pressure to, get a, follow in the footsteps of my siblings in many ways. My oldest sister is a lawyer, my other sister is a doctor, and my brother is a dentist. And so I felt like, oh man, I gotta find something career-wise that's gonna, support me and be stable and whatnot. And I couldn't let go of this, this itch that I needed to study my faith. I needed to know more about God. I needed to know more about how we understand God as Orthodox. And it was actually when my papu passed away that I felt really this kind of like aha moment of,
really?
I need to figure out how to continue on with what he did in whatever way I can. That was the moment where I said, okay, I'm still going to continue my major in communications. Cause I thought at one point I was like, broadcast journalism, that could work for me. But then I, talked to my parents and said, I think I'm going to take a different path. And they were incredibly supportive, thank God. And I'm so grateful for that. So when I was at Villanova in my undergrad, I ended up minoring in theology and doing, some independent studies on Orthodoxy. But it was my senior year where, as I was learning more about my faith, that I had a lot of friends who were pursuing post-college a year of service through a variety of different programs. I had so many friends who did the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. I had friends who did the Peace Corps, who did Teach for America. And, they were also, people of faith who saw this connection between, our faith and service. And so, and I really thought about it. I remember going to the volunteer fair and talking to the JVC rep and thinking like, oh, that sounds really cool. I want to do this. But I also knew that I wanted an Orthodox formation component of it. Mm-hmm. And so I just decided to not apply for that and go straight to my graduate work, my graduate studies. But that dream of having something like, a Jesuit Volunteer Corps for the Orthodox Church really never went away. And so now I feel like I've been talking for a while, but basically, here I am today. And I think a lot back to, what I learned at Crossroad as a high school student. And then what that then sparked in terms of my larger calling and sense of purpose, which has always been to, work with young people and in service to Christ. So.
Well, listen, I want to thank both of you for being so open and honest here, because I think this is really important. That's the reason why I always start out before we get to the topic at hand, right? Because there's a lot of lessons that people can learn from what you all have said. I mean, not the least of which is listen to what your parents tell you. Okay, that's the end of my dad moment. But I mean, in your life, in both of your lives, you talk about hooks, or I call them hooks, right? Or points of inflection, or what Steve Jobs mentioned in his Stanford commencement address of the dots, and he said you can't connect the dots of your life looking forward, you can only connect them looking backward, right? So that senior year in high school, Carolyn, when mom and dad said no, you're going to do Crossroad, was a hook, right? And then when you saw what was going on in the volunteer space, that was another hook. But the hook of your grandfather and I need to understand my faith, and Michael, your paths align perfectly in that point, because you too were trying to sort that piece out, is another hook. And when you start to look back on each of these various dots of your life, I hope that you feel the sense of inevitability that brings you to the place where you are right now. And it's not, it may seem like choices you made, but it really was God and the Holy Spirit guiding you to say, okay, you got that one. Now let's go to the next one. Okay, now you got that one. And I think the other reason why I wanted to cover this up front is because, Carrie, and you touched on it, there's so much pressure, and I, we parents kind of do this a lot too, to pressure kids into the kind of the professions or the academics or the schools and stuff like that. And that's all great. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I did it for 40 years, but at the end of the day, it is not only okay, and it is not only righteous, it is wonderful for someone who feels the sense of calling to service and purpose that both of you have exemplified in your lives. And people that are listening, young people that are listening, or parents of young people that are listening, when you see that, do exactly what Kyra's grandfather did. Don't boot them out in the direction of law school. Just push them in that direction. Say, okay, let the Lord guide you. And I'm so grateful that you shared those experiences and those stories, because I think it's really important for people to hear. So thank you.
Thank you.
But we're not here just to talk about you, although actually we probably could continue and finish the program just talking about you guys, because you're two of the most fascinating people. But we're really going to start to switch and talk a little bit about the Orthodox Volunteer Corps. And a lot of people have heard about it. Y'all done a great job of promoting it. I don't think everyone fully understands how big a deal this is in the Orthodox ecosystem, and how transformational it can be as organizations go and as you serve communities. So give us the factual part of what is OVC, and because you know me, I've got to ask you the why question. What's its why? And then, of course, you can talk about its mission.
Sounds good. I'll start off with the what, and I'll turn it over to Kyra to take the why. For the what, let me just very quickly give a little bit of the backstory. So in September of 2019, the Assembly of Bishops called together a number of Orthodox leaders from across the country to come together and talk about the issue of homelessness and what the church could do to respond. And at that meeting, people began to say, if we're going to think about homelessness and respond as a church to that, we need people who understand both the issue, the details of the issue, right? Who understand how to engage with communities and who are deeply rooted in their faith, right? And who understand their faith. And we need people over a sustained period of time to address that issue, because it's not going to be solved in a night, in a day, in a year, in a decade, right? It's going to take time.
Some summer programming. You can do so much.
There you go. Yeah. Right. And so what we discovered then at this meeting is that a bunch of different people were saying, yes, we need to do that, train up a generation of folks who can do that work and be skilled and equipped to do it. And we were using the same language. We need an Orthodox Volunteer Corps, right? And so the Assembly of Bishops commissioned a group to address that, to try to first articulate what that could look like, and then ultimately to develop it. And for 2 years we were meeting, and there was this working group. We met for a period of time weekly, right? Other times it was not that often, and it was just a lot of sweat and effort. And we eventually formed a nonprofit status. Thank God we got the blessing of the Assembly of Bishops to work on this, and then ultimately for it to become the newest agency of the Assembly of Bishops. And so here is what Orthodox Volunteer Corps then is in a nutshell. It is an effort to invest in an intensive way a year in young adults, 10 months in Orthodox young adults, so that they can be prepared to serve for a lifetime, right? It is a 10-month intensive program where we will do two things, right? Number one, we will utilize service as a way of investing in young adults, as both a training ground for young adults and as something that is important in and of itself. So young adults will serve for 10 months. As they do that service, there will also be formation that is at the core of it, because what we need to do is invest in young adults so they're prepared, right, to do service over a lifetime. And so that requires intensive investment. We'll talk more about what we call 4 transformative encounters, or 4 pillars of the program, a little bit later on. But that investment in young adults, right, by using service in 10 months intensive full-time way, is at the core of what OVC is about. Kyra, why don't you say a word about the why?
And before you do, Kyra, I just want to make sure everybody emphasizes or hears the emphasis on the word investment. Because we know how to make people happy. We know how to make kids happy. We can have a basketball tournament or a dance competition or even a summer camp. All good stuff. I'm not shooting at any of those. And we make that's a nominal investment, but you're talking about making an intense investment, and an intense investment in both the service component and then forming them up so that, as we talk about in that scripture passage, that they're prepared for a lifetime. And I think this is, so that people hear this and see this clearly, this is one of the things that's so different about OVC from so many of the other wonderful things we do, within the Orthodox ecosystem. And I don't want people to lose sight of the importance of making that intense investment in these young men and women. So, okay, Kyra, why are we doing this?
So we have three components of our why, because we see that the need for Orthodox Volunteer Corps is singular and urgent. And I'll say a little bit about each of these. So the first is why spend a year investing in Orthodox young adults? Well, we see that young adults are leaving the church in high numbers.
Right.
Research shows this, and anecdotally, I've seen several of the youth that I've even worked with, become disillusioned with and disconnected from the church as they grow into this period of adulthood. And oftentimes what I hear is that they feel a disconnect between what's happening within the walls of the church and the needs of those outside the church and what they see happening. And at the same time, we see that young adults of the 21st century are hungry to serve and make an impact. They're responding to this
Right.
moment where they see suffering and injustice, and they have a desire to serve. And so for us, the first thing is we see young adults are leaving. We also see that they have a desire to serve. So that's the first one. The second one is that there are very few formative opportunities for Orthodox young adults in the church.
Right.
We have done, as coming from, a program where I worked with high school students, I would say we do a good job with our children and our youth, high school students, even up to college with programs like Orthodox Christian Fellowship. But when they become young adults and enter this pivotal stage of their life, there are really few opportunities. I mean, maybe a couple conferences here and there, which are wonderful. And again, I think that those are great. But there's not this like deep investment. And we know that the church is a home for service. That's where they can invest their hunger to serve. And Christ calls us to clothe the naked, to feed the hungry, welcome the stranger. This is our calling. And so we believe that the Orthodox Church is positioned to take more action in service to our neighbors who are most in need, and provide that formative opportunity for young adults in service connected to the church so that it relates to, what we see the early Christians doing and what they were known for, radical
Yes,
service
exactly.
for those in need, developing
Yeah.
hospitals and orphanages. I think of St. Basil in the New Caesarea and what he
Yep.
did for that community, or even later on, St. Maria of Paris. So the second why for us is we know there are a few formative opportunities, so we want to provide that formative opportunity and provide it in the church. And then the final why is just that the 20s are a really pivotal time, and that's the age range that we're focusing on, 21 to 29. As we said, there are a lot of formative opportunities for students up until that age, but then they really drop off. And studies are showing this period of 21 to 29 as emerging adulthood, where the traditional markers of transition into adulthood are taking longer and longer.
Exactly.
And yet this stage is still, young adults are making big decisions in this period of time and really discerning what they want to do. And that will impact the establishment long-term of their careers or their relationships or how involved they stay in the church. So for us, we see this why as, if during their 20s, this really pivotal time in their life, we can develop a heart for service and accompany young adults in developing a heart for service. Service then becomes a way of life that gets integrated into our jobs, our families, and our communities. And the church becomes integrated into our jobs, our families, and our communities. So those are some of the three whys of Orthodox Volunteer Corps. And really our mission is that through this service and formation, Orthodox Volunteer Corps will transform young adults. And through the transformation of young adults, they will then strengthen the church. And
Right.
then together, they will transfigure the world.
Yeah.
So that is our why, and that is our mission.
Well, I'm sorry that you didn't pick something worthwhile. I'm sorry you picked something. Holy moly, folks! Did you hear what these people were saying over here? And honestly, I mean, you know this because you live it. But how many times have you heard parents and adults say, "Gosh, I wish there was something we could do. I wish there was something we could reach out. I wish there was." I mean, we know that's when they're leaving the church because we can't force them to go to church anymore, right? And not in a humorous way. That's sick to say, but it's true. But so this is really a unique gold mine that is being mined in front of it. And I love the way that you articulated not only the intense investment that Michael talked about, but also creating that in a form of a heart for service, so that it becomes the default response. It's like, I don't have to think about, am I going to serve or am I going to be generous? It's the default response. That's what we do. Like, doesn't everybody do that, right? And so I think if you can achieve those whys through that mission, I think that's wonderful. Now, we're going to take a break in just a second, but before we take a break, I want to talk real quickly, because the rubber always meets the road on the operational side, right? So as we've gone from 50,000 feet to 20,000 feet, let me crash you down to about 1,000 feet. And I'd ask you to talk a little bit more about your vision about the process of what are these young adults going to do day to day or week to week as part of the exciting elements of that 10 months of intense investment?
Sure, I can answer that. So what it will look like is 6 to 8 young adults will be living in a community together in a house, and in our launch city, which is Pittsburgh. So they will begin with an orientation retreat where we will prepare them for the year ahead. They will then move into their house, where they will live in community together, doing the good, hard, enriching work of figuring out how to cook together, clean together, pray together. And then 4 days a week, they are going to be placed at a nonprofit. We're calling them our placement partners, because we will have already established a relationship with these nonprofits, and they will work on specific projects at these nonprofits and be supervised there to really better understand the community, the needs of the community, the assets of the community, and do that hands-on service work. And there are, a variety of different nonprofits that we're looking at this time too, which we've already secured. But at this time, we're just saying they're working at a nonprofit. Then 1 day a week, they will be in seminar. And Michael's going to say a bit more about seminar, but later on, but this is, 1 day a week where we take time to reflect on the service that they're doing, to understand why they're doing it. What does Orthodox theology have to say about it? But also, what does it mean for us to be Orthodox Christian leaders in these spaces? How do we look to Christ as our model for leadership? And what does it mean to have a true servant's heart? And so, the format is 4 days a week you work, 1 day a week you're in seminar. And then throughout it, we're really wanting to encourage the young adults to engage the local community, get to know their neighbors, get to know what's going on. And then, of course, undergirding it all, and, again, Michael's going to talk about this a little bit later, is obviously participation in the life of the church and the life of local parishes. And so that is going to be a critical aspect of the program. I think one of the exciting elements, that I know if I were a young adult, I would be interested in this, is, there are 3 big retreats that happen throughout the year where we will really take that time to reflect on what's happening, to get to know our cohort mates. But really, it is an intensive 10-month experience of service and formation, where your whole heart, your soul, your strength, your mind, your body, everything is fully invested in your community and the communities that you're serving.
So they will be working at, and not all at the same nonprofit, right? They'll be working at vetted and approved and verified, legitimate nonprofits that are making a good difference. They'll be living in community, both as an insular community, but as part of a bigger, deeper Orthodox church community, as well as the city community that they live in. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be providing them contextual and instructive information that they need to continue to develop and apply what they're learning. Is that kind of a gross simplification of the complexity of that you're offering?
Correct. And part of that too is also just mentorship and guidance throughout the process, because we know that, that's mentorship is critical at this stage in life. And so that will come in the form of, OBC staff mentoring the core members, but then their site supervisors and then local leaders in the community. We really want to engage the community, as we said. And so reaching out to local priests and lay leaders is going to be important for us, so that it's a whole community investment in these young adults.
Yeah, and the reason why I want to kind of let you say that is, as we go, we're going to take a break in a second, but as we go to the next segment, I want people listening to this to start to see themselves helping OVC. And there's going to be a lot of different ways you can help, but one of the ways you can help is to be a mentor, to be somebody that's helping, to provide you instruction, to help give you the content for instruction, and et cetera, as well as being part of the communities that welcome these young men and women. And I can't imagine that it ain't gonna be a lot of fun living in community and sharing those experiences, kind of growing together in those ages. I mean, right? I mean, that's got to be a big part of it too.
Yep.
Right.
Yep, for sure.
All right. So we're going to take a short break right now, and when we come back, we're gonna dig back in with Michael Sider-Rose and Carolyn Barakas and learn more about their disruptive lives as young people, ringing bells and barging into. No, we're gonna focus on what I think is really, really important. So I want everybody to pay close attention here. That there are 4 very transformational encounters that OVC is targeted at. And I want to make sure that you hear what they're talking about. So we're gonna take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Bill will be right back, but the lines are open if you want to ask a question or offer your thoughts. The number is 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO.
No end of books these days offer us techniques for self-improvement. But in the newest release from the Ancient Faith store, Gratitude in Life's Trenches, Robin Phillips takes a different tack. He shows us that God meets us where we are, in the pain and heartache of the present moment. Instead of looking for a way to escape from hardship, we can cultivate an attitude of gratitude, peace, and self-acceptance that will transform our experience of suffering. Drawing on his own experiences and his work as a consultant in the behavioral health industry, as well as stories of saints and sufferers, teachings of the fathers, and recent discoveries in neuroscience, Phillips shows us that the journey to personal well-being is one we can all travel, regardless of the hardships we may face. To find this book and others like it, you can go to store.ancientfaith.com. Again, that is store.ancientfaith.com.
Stewardship Calling is back, and we are ready for your call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Bill Marianes.
So welcome back to Stewardship Calling, in our first Wednesday program, where my special guests are Michael Sider-Rose and Carolyn Barakas, and we're exploring the why and the vision and the practical consequences and the transformational activities of the Orthodox Volunteer Corps, one of the newest agencies of the Assembly of Bishops. Again, if anybody wants to call in with any questions for Michael and Kyra, call us at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. Now, OVC in its formation, guys, has talked about 4 what you call transformational encounters. And if I get that right, I think they're in the area of service, formation, community, and church. So I would like the two of you to explore each of those 4 transformational encounters. And I want people listening to actually see how the young men and young women that are participating in OVC, as well as the people that are facilitating their participation, are actually creating this transformational interrelationship and encounter in service, formation, community, and church. So walk us through that.
Sure, I'll begin. So let's think about the first one there, service. And I want to link this to the earlier conversation about the importance of this intensive effort over, this length of time, 10 months of time. So service is the first piece. As Kyra mentioned, what we're going to do is we've been developing relationships with nonprofits in the city of Pittsburgh. We'll do the same thing when we expand to other cities. And people, the participants will spend 4 days a week at that service placement work. It's important that they're going to be at that nonprofit for 10 months. Staying at a nonprofit and working almost full-time for 10 months is going to give them a chance to understand how that organization works. One thing that's going to really help them in terms of their professional development, right? They're going to be able to understand the dynamics of an organization. They're going to be able to see a project from beginning to end. That's something that you simply can't see when you do something in a short-term context. Right. They will also be there long enough to understand some of the difficulties, right? The struggle that is involved in a nonprofit. That's really critical because service work, right, is absolutely a blessing, and the challenge. Wait.
You broke.
Right?
Hey, Michael, you broke up there in a second. Say that again, because I got a feeling it was really important. You said service is, and then say it again.
Service is both a blessing and a challenge, right? So it is a blessing in that it is our calling, and we receive so much from doing that work. when you were in the intro, right? All the benefits of service.
Right.
But service is also hard. It's challenging, right? There are times where the work is just, there's ugliness, right? There are times where people are not grateful, right, for the work that you're doing. It's important to be able to lean into that struggle, right, to experience that and to get to the other side of it, right? Because there's a deeper sense of, I think, calling and peace and fulfillment when one can work through some of those struggles, right? And so professional benefit, and I think a benefit in terms of our calling to have that intensive, longer term experience of service, right? In these service opportunities also, there's really going to be an impressive breadth of opportunity, right? So we have a connection to, for instance, the Neighborhood Resilience Project in Pittsburgh, which does trauma-informed community development, really cutting-edge work, right? We're in conversation with an organization that does some urban farming, right? That does after-school work, right? And so there's just, with a homeless shelter, there's a variety of options, right, that I think will give some people some tremendous experience. Service is one piece, but formation is another piece, because it is not enough to simply give folks the opportunity to serve. We have to take time to reflect on the meaning of that service, right? We have to take time to help folks think about, how can I serve constructively, right? How can I understand the dynamics of the community in which I am operating, right? How can I figure out ways so that I understand myself well enough to know how I can bring my own particular gifts to a situation, right? But then also understand how I can draw on the assets of others, right? How can I work within groups in constructive ways? So there's a whole realm of things related to leadership development that we'll be working on, that I'll for sure draw on the experience that I've had with Coro and other organizations that I've worked with. So that's another piece. And still another piece of that formation is, as we mentioned before, we've got to understand how we're grounded in our Orthodox faith, right? And here I want to make a connection to the last piece, church, right? So one way in which we as Orthodox bring something that is unique and powerful to the broader community, right, is this sacramental understanding of service and of our lives. And so we've got to connect our service to the life of the church. If we don't do that, how could we be Orthodox and have a program that seeks to be Orthodox and provide service if we don't have that fundamental link, right? So that's just a connection that I really wanted to make very clear there. So the formation is a piece that's really important as another one of these transformative encounters, and then community, and here. There are links, and I appreciate you making these links earlier, Bill, that there's the community of group of core members, right? The participants in the program. That's a powerful community in and of itself, right? I know from working with young adults and from a variety of educational contexts, the importance of peer learning, right? Creating a context where there is lively discussion, right? Lively conversation and dialogue where we're open, right? We can hear hard questions, allow those hard questions to come in. We can allow a little child to run behind the altar, right? And take that moment and to learn from that, and so
embrace it.
So yes, we're going to absolutely embrace those challenging questions. And as we do that, then draw on the insights of those core members, right? So the service, the seminar will be very interactive, right? So there's that community, right? But then there's also that community of just the immediate neighborhood in which folks will be living, right? And all of the learning that can take place from those engagements, right? There's the community that is the nonprofit where people will be working, right? There will ultimately be the community across cities when we build in multiple cities, right? And then so importantly, the community that is the church, right? Both the local parish and then also, across parishes, right? And just very quickly, we had a meeting with a number of bishops from the Pittsburgh area. And what they said they wanted to do was have a blessing where all the bishops come together, a blessing of the house, right?
Wow. Wouldn't that be powerful?
Would be a
I hope you videotape
thing, right?
that one. You videotape that one and put that out there, brother. That's huge.
Absolutely. So that's a word about these 4 transformative encounters.
Yeah. So, and to me, and again, I may be drinking your Kool-Aid quickly here, but it seems to me that while they are all distinct, in other words, you can intellectually understand them in separate pillars, they are all interact. They are all interrelated, right? One actually serves the other, supports the other, facilitates the other, is a natural connection to the other. It's just, to me, it's not just, it's four pillars that are really four pieces of pillar that are bound together in one. And
that's right.
It really gets back to that sense of intentional heart for service and community that really comes from all of this. And so I think that's really critical.
And there again, no, I appreciate you saying that, Bill, because all of those four things, right, are rooted in this core idea that this is an investment, an intensive investment in young adults, right? And if we can make this commitment, honestly, if we can make this commitment as a broad Orthodox community, right, to our young adults, I believe that we will see the benefit of that over a long term, but we got to make the commitment.
Yeah, and I think the other benefit from a different metaphorical perspective is, everybody's seen the old thing of where somebody walks up with one twig and it can break, and you put another twig and a third twig and a fourth twig, and you tie them all together, and it becomes a mighty stick that really can't be broken. So if those four pillars are connected together, such that there is an undergirding and a common ethos of service and formation and community and church, and they don't see them as four distinctive things. They see them as one integral thing. Then that's a bond that's not going to be broken, no matter what issues come to them later in life.
That's nice. That's nice. Yes.
All right. So we have a caller here, and it's somebody who you all will know. And for people that don't know, Nicholas Anton is on the phone here. We just can't keep him away. He's such a good guy. For people that don't know Nick, not only is he like the board chair of OVC here, but he's also the director of operations of the Assembly of Bishops. And he's in snowbound Chicago, Illinois. So Nick, are you with us?
Hey, Bill. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, well, I can hear you fine now, man. Good. Thank you for calling in and talking about. Let's talk about Michael and Kyra as if they're not here. Okay, let's pretend like nobody is listening and we just talk about them. So Nick, you've got a unique perspective, both in your capacity as director of operations for the assembly that kind of shepherded this process through, but also kind of in a board chair responsibility. What is it that you can share?
Well, if we're talking about Michael and Kyra, I'll just say they're the two finest people we have out there. They've been here from the beginning, and when this seed was born all the way back in, September 2019 or so, I said to them, if this is something that we're going to do, you guys got to be the ones that are going to do it, because you hear their passion on this, you hear their life stories. I mean, it's just, they're the right people for the job. First, I just want to thank all of the people, though, who have given generously to OVC. We have a number of donors that have helped us get to where we are now, and a really strong board and a really committed board. The board has given their time, their talent, and their treasure. They're unbelievable. I mean, I don't think a single day goes by where we don't have some exchange between board members. We have a person who does HR, who's volunteering her time on that area, an accountant who's volunteering his time to make sure our books are in order. We have legal help that's been volunteering there. So we want to make sure every donation, every dollar that comes in goes as far as it can. So we have an amazing board who's able to do all of those things. You had mentioned the assembly perspective, and I think that's really important. The bishops had gotten a report from this meeting that Michael and Kyra had talked about earlier that stated this strong need. And it was a need that was being reported from people who work directly with youth and young adults. And the bishop said, well, if this is a direct need coming from our people, we need to respond to it. And I just want to mention that because this is a process that was started by the bishops. It was for the faithful, supported continually and to this day by the bishops, to the point where it was made, the newest agency of the Assembly of Bishops. So it has the full backing and support of the 57 bishops of the assembly. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but there's just a few things I wanted to say.
Yeah, and Michael's done a really good job, and Kyra has added really good content in terms of helping us understand from their day-to-day perspective. But I'm really grateful for you for adding a component there that everybody needs to understand, that the board here, that it is a separate corporation, it is a 501c3 charity, it is fully approved and vetted by the Assembly of Bishops, but it's a board that's rolled up their sleeves and brought the gifts that God has given them to serve this ministry of intense investment and transformation. And so I think it's important for people listening to know, not only is this a beautiful, incredible program, but this is one that has a commitment not only from the very top with the hierarchs, but even through all the board members that are participating, and then ultimately as Kyra and Michael are successful in recruiting other people to be involved in. And I think your perspective on that is really grateful. All right, is there anything else you want to say, or any other shots you want to take about, you know, Michael's baseball ability, or Kyra's disruptive church services attendance, or anything else that we want to pick on them about, or anything else you want to add, Nico?
No. I want to add one more thing, and that's that we also have an advisory council. That this is the working group the assembly initially set up. Once there was a board, we transitioned the members of that working group who did not, you know, become board members, you know, for time and reasons and other things like that. But they continue to meet once a month, once every other week or so. I'm not sure Kyra and Michael can comment on that, but they meet regularly, and they continue to give a lot of effort as well. The big launch event that some people probably tuned into, they put that all together. So, so that's another thing. I forgot to mention that council, that committee, or whatever we're calling it. But it's an amazing group of people, and they've been there since the very beginning. So just, you know, an appeal to everyone that's listening, if you're eligible, if you're in that 21 to 29 range, and this sounds interesting, go to our website and apply. We as many people as we can get to apply, the better. And if you're not eligible in that range, but you have a brother or a sister or a daughter or a grandchild, please encourage them to look into this a little bit. It's a great opportunity. It's something that's never existed in the Orthodox world before, but it's here now. So please do that. And again, anyone else that has, you know, time, talent, or treasure that'd like to give to OVC, our inbox is open. We're very open, and you can get in contact with us. So thank you so much. Thanks, Bill, for having me on.
Nick, I really appreciate your calling in, and I think what is kind of important for everybody to understand is kind of what you said in that regard, is that just as Kyra and Michael started their journey, in some cases because a parent either served as an example or pushed them, we want all of the parents listening, and the grandparents and the godparents listening, to see this as a unique opportunity for a young man or young woman that's in your family, or that you know, or that maybe you're coaching, or maybe you have a peripheral relationship with, as something that would be great for them to do. But we also want to engage you in some way, in some fashion, in supporting this. So this is kind of a good segue, actually. Kyra and Michael, share for our listeners, you know, how can young adults apply to participate in this incredible opportunity? And what are some of the things that the rest of us can do to support OVC and your great vision?
Well, first of all, we are, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you fine.
Oh, okay, great, awesome. Applications are available now for young adults. They have been open for the past month or so, and they are due February 15th. So
February 15th, right after Valentine's Day. Okay.
That's right. That's right.
Was
Full
that,
of
I don't know
love
if that was
and ready to serve.
Yeah, that love thing, man. You're never going to get over it, are you? Okay, so that's good.
That's right.
Where can they get the application, and kind of quickly, what's included in the application? What do they need to be thinking about in that application?
So you apply online by visiting www.orthodoxvolunteercorps.org.
Spell that out, because we always try to do that for our listeners.
Yep. OrthodoxVolunteercorps.org.
Now, so you pass the spelling test, you get to the next round, but the key thing I want everybody to listen to is core, although it sounds like C-O-R-E, is C-O-R-P-S. Okay, all right. So
Correct.
They go online, and they're going to see an application. Are they going to see it right away where it's easy to see?
Yes, there is a button that says apply, and there is a whole section on what does it mean to serve and the application process. So what we're looking for applications is, you know, just some basic and general information. We request a resume and an essay. And if people are interested in knowing some of the essay questions in advance, they can reach out to us. We'd be happy to send them to them. And then 2 recommendations. So we really want to get as best a sense of who the applicant is. And so we request 1 priest recommendation, a clergy recommendation, and then an additional recommendation, perhaps from, a coach, a mentor, a teacher, professor, etc. So,
right. So they need to be thinking
basic
about
information,
right?
Essay, resume, and 2 recommendations.
So they can be thinking about who their recs are from and what their resume is. That's pretty easy. Are the questions preset? Are they, where do they find the questions?
They are. So they are in. Oh, go ahead, Michael.
The only thing I was going to say, if you go on a website and you click on the apply, once you get into the application there, at the very first top, at the very beginning, there's a link right away that says, if you want to look at all the questions, take your time just to reflect on it, you can just click on this link so they can see all the questions right there.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And then can they fill it out in pieces? Like if they get one piece, but they're waiting for a recommendation or something like that, they can add it later. It doesn't all have to be at once, or does it all have to be at once?
They should do it all at once.
Okay.
That's why we have the link that they can look and see, here's all the things that I need to gather. Then when you're ready, jump back in and do it.
Okay. So that's just what I want to make sure everybody understood is really want you to apply, but make sure you have all the components together when you sit down and do it so that you can get it all done and behind you. That's excellent. Okay, great. So they apply online, and then tell me what happens after Valentine's Day. What's the process look like?
So once we review the applications, they'll be invited for an interview.
Okay.
And if if the interview goes well and it meets the criteria that we're looking for, upon, of course, reflection and prayer, we will have 6 to 8 young adults who are accepted into our first cohort. And they will know in the springtime. So they will know sometime in March whether or not they've been accepted to the program.
Great. Quick response time. That's awesome. That's great. I'm assuming that if somebody applies and doesn't get accepted, they can reapply next time, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And is there, so you know me, I'm always pushing for the scale, right? So I can envision a time, hopefully sooner rather than later, where there's a lot of young men and women that are interested in this. So, but you've got to build the organization and vet the charities and build the house and do all the right stuff. So is there something that you guys are starting to think about for what we can do for the rest of the young women and young men who, for whatever reason, we're just not ready to take in right now?
A couple of things we could say to that. The first is that we're beginning in one city, but we're not going to stop in one city, right?
Thank you.
So we are going to expand over time to other places. Pittsburgh is our launch city. In our strategic plan, we have in year 4 that we want to open in a second city, which most likely will be Boston. And then we're going to go from there, right? We want to be careful and thoughtful in the expansion process and open to the Spirit and open to other things that emerge. So, but we're going to expand over time. So that's a first thing to say. A second thing to say is that the full-time program, right, this immersive 10-month experience is the core of what we're doing. But we also want to work over time to begin what we're calling a part-time program. So for folks who maybe are working or in school full-time and they're not ready, or just not in a place in life to take that 10 months away from everything else and just invest in this, we're gonna create a part-time program which will have a lot of the same curriculum, not on as full of a scale, but the same curriculum, right? More episodic opportunities to serve, right? Okay. And then connecting them to the full-time members so that together full-time and part-time folks can, as young adults, develop service work that is valuable for themselves and for the broader church. Right?
That's powerful. Yeah, no, that's really powerful. Just, I can see how the alumni network builds from that and all these wonderful things. So that's great. So what I'm hearing you say is that we cannot begin the lobbying for you to come to our city and set up one in our city yet, right? We got to hold off.
Hey, you can lobby us any day you want, right?
All right.
If and seriously, like if there's something that, so there's a variety of factors, right, that we're going to use to decide, when we move and where to other cities. But starting the conversation, absolutely. Let's start.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I think all those wonderful Yankee cities you've chosen are great, but I think you need to set up something down here in Atlanta. And I can think of another city in Florida. I can actually think of 2 cities in Florida that would be ideally suited for this, but that's a conversation for another day. Okay, so we want the young people to start applying. They've got until now in February. They should go to the website. Don't forget there's a S at the end of core, and look at the criterion, find the essay. How long is the essay? Is there a limit, a size limit?
Three parts to it.
Okay.
Each part, I believe, is a 500-word
okay.
part.
All right. So that's easy. That's not easy. It's manageable. That's not a big deal. Okay, great. And one other thing that we didn't say, during the time that they participate in this program, the 10-month program, I'm assuming that OVC, through the donations and everything, are picking up their housing expenses. Are they getting any compensation for the services they're performing for the nonprofit?
They are.
Yes.
So there's a modest stipend. So
okay.
Go ahead, Tyra. Sorry.
No. Go ahead. Go for it.
Forgive me for interrupting. There is so there's a modest stipend that every Corps member gets, and we did this because we wanted to make sure that people were not excluded from the program because they they don't have the financial means to do it. Right? People are going to be coming from different situations, but we wanted to have that across the board. Right? So modest stipend. We cover the housing. If people need help in terms of loan deferment, we can work with you on that. If somebody needs health insurance, we can make arrangements for that. A lot of people, I think, will be able to stay on their parents' plan, but if not, we can make arrangements for that. And then the one thing I'll say then is we also are going to invite every participant, right, to participate in a piece of the fundraising, though, because we think that's important for their just own development. And also we think that they're really positioned to say, hey, we can pay this forward, right? We got
they're going to be your best advocates,
right?
to be honest with you, right? I mean, it's, Kyra, you know this. I mean, you want to recruit somebody to participate in Crossroad, just talk to a Crossroad alum. Yeah, everybody else shut up and just listen to those people that have gone through the program. They're going to be the best salespeople, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
That's brilliant. No, okay, great. So that's brilliant. All right, so I like that. Now, but there's others of us. So regrettably, I'm no longer 21 through 29 because I'd have loved to have done something like this, and my kids are much older than that. So what about the rest of us? I mean, there's got to be something that every listener to this program can do to support OVC, because I really would like to see everybody find a way to participate. What are some of the things that the rest of us can do to help you on your incredible transformational mission?
Well, first and foremost, pray.
Amen.
We need this. This has been certainly a labor of love. As Nick was saying, the collective efforts of our advisory council and our board have really been tremendous and a lot of work. But there's also been a lot of prayer, and we feel that coming from the community, and we need more prayers. That especially as we're preparing for our first cohort, that you pray for the hearts and minds of these young people, and that, we're doing the good work of the Lord. So that's the first thing.
So let me stop you right there.
Sure.
Let me stop right there. I think it would be wonderful if the parishes and the priests who are listening or listen later on in the podcast recorded version of it, think about actually creating a kind of formal prayer moment in church for all the young men and women that are going to be dedicating this act of service as in part of their formation. Let's kind of make this a little bit bigger than just our individual prayer, as important as our individual prayer is. Let's actually include the institutional piece on it. Okay, got it. Prayer. What else?
Absolutely. Thank you. The second thing is help spread the word. So we are a new organization, and we are doing everything we can to reach out to our, the Orthodox networks and connect within the Orthodox ecosystem. But really, this is something that spreads by word of mouth. And so we ask that you share with your parish communities. We have brochures, we have an infographic on applications. We're creating a bulletin insert. So if you would like to help spread the word about this ministry to your community, please email us. You can find our email on our website, which I mentioned before, orthodoxvolunteercorps.org. And so that's a wonderful way to help support, is to spread the word. Follow us on social media for updates. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. But really do what you can to share with your communities about Orthodox Volunteer Corps. So that's the second thing. All
right, I'm going to park you right there, and I'm going to make a more specific, intentional ask of everybody who listens to this program, you belong to a parish, or if not, you have a relationship with a parish, I would like to ask you to make sure that this story is shared by taking the content that they produce and incorporating it in the bulletins. If nothing more, just promoting it in the websites and things of that nature, in your word of mouth, in your ministry committees and your councils, whatever you do. I would ask anybody who listens into this program to actually do something to talk about and share the story of OVC. All right. So we pray for you and we talk about you. What's number 3?
Number 3 is we invite the organization financially. So, we are a small nonprofit startup, and we are, hoping to engage folks both with, with their time, talent, and their treasure. And so, if in whatever way you feel you're able to give, and if you feel motivated to give, we encourage you to support this ministry, which impacts these young adults and the communities that they're serving. And so that, for us, is really key. It's transformational in terms of who it's impacting, both our young adults and the communities that they're serving.
So you want people to help invest, to co-invest, to provide you the financial support that you need, not only to staff this, to provide the housing, to do the tactical and the administrative work, to make sure that we have it's not like anybody's making a lot of money on this thing, but it's a 501c3 charity, right? So there's a tax deduction, I assume, associated with this, right?
That is correct. Yes.
So it's prayer, share, and investment. And I just really would like to make sure that that's planted in everyone's mind, that if we are truly serious about investing in our young men and young women to prepare them for a lifetime of service, then we have to pray for them. We have to help share the word about them, and we have to invest in them. And OVC is a vehicle for all 3 of those things. Are we missing anything?
I think those are great.
That's it. Michael, would you add anything?
No, Kyra mentioned mentoring earlier, and so when we enter into each of the cities and we're working, we'd love to connect with folks on the grassroots level to connect with these young adults. So, for instance, in Pittsburgh, right, we're going to need to outfit a house, right? When we get that set up, we're going to need folks who will say, "Hey, I'll invite you over to a meal," right? We need folks who are going to walk with these young adults and say, "Hey, I'm a lawyer, right? Or I work at a nonprofit. Like, you can shadow me for a day, right? We can talk about my career journey. We could talk about my faith journey." That kind of mentoring will be really critical.
So that investment, just so everybody hears, that investment is financial, but it's more than financial. In other words, if you have some other skill or ability or resource or something else you can help invest in, then you need to be thinking about how you're going to invest. If you're serious about addressing the issues, the why issues that Kyra talked about earlier, then this is your best investment, or one of your best investments that you can make. And the question isn't so much, should I? The question so much is, what can I invest in this? And the point you make about serving and helping and mentoring and providing and meals and things of that nature, just helping to be part of that community, is another valuable investment. I think that's really powerful. So thank you for adding that.
Yeah.
All right, Michael and Kyra, I've kept you way too late. I know it's past your bedtime because both of you are good people. But are there any final things that you'd like to add, or words of wisdom that you want to impart before we cut you loose?
I think the only thing that I would say in conclusion is just a more practical thing, and that is that for any way that you want to engage with us, if we're not already connected to you, the website is the way to first get that connection, right? So whether that is about you can do praying from wherever you are, right? You can learn more concretely what to pray for, right, by going to the website, right? In terms of sharing more about this, again, the website's got a page on spreading the word, right? If you want to just understand more about us and get on our mailing list, there's a subscribe section on the website. If you want to make a financial donation, there's a button on the website. So orthodoxvolunteercorps.org is a great way to get connected to us.
Fantastic. Kyra, what else? What final words or parting shots do you want to offer?
Just a big thank you to you, Bill, for the opportunity to share more about Orthodox Volunteer Corps, and a thank you to everyone in the community who has supported us up until this point and has been part of the efforts of making Orthodox Volunteer Corps a reality. It truly is a collaborative ministry, and we are just so grateful to have the opportunity to do this work.
Well, thank
Amen.
you both. I just really want to take this moment to, on behalf of all the people out there, including people who listen now or listen later, or may never listen. I want to thank the two of you all for being willing to make the ultimate sacrifice and investment of your lives in this glorious work that you're doing, and to not only wish you the best and pray for the best, but actually invite everyone to find a way to participate in the extraordinary work of Orthodox Volunteer Corps. Whether you sign up and get their newsletters, whether you help people, young men and women, volunteer to serve, whether you provide letters of reference or mentoring or anything else, just reach out to them through the website orthodoxvolunteercorps.org and find a way to engage in them, so that in a year or 2 or 5 or 10 or 20, we're no longer saying that's when we lose our young men and young women. So thank you very much to Michael Sider-Rose and Carolyn Barakas and Nick and the rest of the incredible people behind the Orthodox Volunteer Corps and everything they're going to do to address the needs of the young people. I always have to give a big shout out of thanks to Matushka Trudy Richter, who's my show producer in Chesterton, Indiana, and just the heartbeat of this whole program. Folks, if you find any of these Stewardship Calling First Wednesday or Fifth Sunday shows helpful or informative, tell your friends and share them. They're free. It's no big deal. And you can always get the archived podcast version of this, again, either by going to my website, stewardshipcalling.com, to the podcast internet radio page and just scroll down to the date you want. Or you can do it the same way by going to the Ancient Faith radio page, find the Stewardship Calling page, and again, scroll down to the date. Now, I always talk about the next show. The upcoming January 30th is a fifth Sunday. So, my program's on every first Wednesday and any month that has a fifth Sunday. And so January has both the first Wednesday and a fifth Sunday. So we're going to be doing a January 30th Stewardship Calling fifth Sunday program. I'm going to be actually in transit coming back from a full parish retreat that I'm leading. So it will be pre-recorded. Unfortunately, it will not be live, but it'll be aired on January 30th. And it is going to be pretty important. It's going to be devoted to beginning a critical reassessment as to what our churches and ministries have been through in the last 2 years and the course corrections that the future may require. It's going to be the first of a 2-part series that I'm devoting on the possible paths for the Orthodox Church in the United States. We're going to actually start to explore where are we now, and we're going to take a deep dive into the Orthodox Church from the perspective of 2 of the most amazing principles that are out there. They were created by the late Dr. Clayton Christensen of Harvard Business School. One of them is the disruptive innovation theory, and the others is the job to be done theory. And we're going to start to look at the Orthodox Church in terms of where we are. We're going to start to look at who are our disruptive innovators. We're going to look at who are our constituents and stakeholders, and what is it that everybody needs out of that. And so January 30 is going to be the first of this 2-part series. We're going to get into this and do some deep dive exploration. And I'm going to, again, the January 30 show is going to be pre-recorded, and then we're going to do a live show, and I encourage you to call in on that. Of course, always invite you to check out the resources at stewardshipcalling.com, and now you need to check out the resources at orthodoxvolunteer.org. If you need anything or I can be of any assistance to you, please reach out to me at bill@stewardshipcalling.com and let me know what you're thinking, what I can help you with. As I always try to do at the end, I want to remind you that 2 of the most important days of your life are, first, the day you were born, and second, the day you figure out why. And if you're not already living your stewardship calling, I hope that you'll begin to prayerfully discern your why in your stewardship calling and start living the most extraordinary second part of your life. I thank you for listening. God bless you all. I wish you a Happy New Year. And as always, I pray that you SOTPAETJ, which stands for stay on the path, capital T, capital P, and enjoy the journey. God bless and good night.